Hey, everybody, it's Jeff here once again with the Freedom Nation podcast, where we help you find your freedom day. On today's show, we have Elizabeth Eiss on. Now, Elizabeth, I actually met a few months ago when we were paired up on a networking interview. And I just loved what she did, both her story and what she does for a business. So Elizabeth actually owns a business that helps small businesses and entrepreneurs match themselves up with freelancers. And she really helps that process, very hands-on, not like a lot of the sites. So stay tuned and learn a little bit about her story as well as what she does today.
All in you. Everything you're looking for, it's all in you. You gotta believe that it's all in you. Everything you're searching for, it's all in.
Hey, Freedom Nation, it's Jeff here once again, and welcome to another edition of the Freedom Nation podcast. And today I've got Elizabeth Eiss on. So I met Elizabeth a few months ago through a networking organization online, and we just hit it off so well. And also, she really has an intriguing and interesting business that she went in. It was her freedom business that helped her get out, and she's helped others in the same process. So, Elizabeth, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I am thrilled to be here today, and we had a great time the first time around.
It was one of those ones where you're like, you get done and you go, God, I wish I'd have recorded that. It was great. But we'll have the same conversation again and go even deeper. Let's get started with your story. So how did you get to where you are today?
Well, I think my story is probably really similar to a lot of people's. Got out of college, didn't know what I was going to do, took a job. Actually, the reason I took my first job was because it came with an expense account and I got to travel. That was as sophisticated as it got. But it happened to be the insurance industry. And That's not an industry people go, oh, wow, I want to be in the insurance industry universally. But I ended up on the company side, and I was in commercial risk underwriting, which was really fascinating. Every day was different. I was learning about so many different industries and businesses and what made a good one run well and what made a bad one have losses. And because insurance is just another way, in a sense, capitalize what's happening in your business and protect it from risk. So to make a long story short, I spent years working in several different commercial insurance companies and became a very senior executive at the end of the day, wore every hat. I was chief operating officer around a lot of things, did a lot in technology because I was one of those people that, hey, try this new thing out and see if it helps the business. And I was always, yeah, let's go for it. Not kind of a NIMBY kind of thing. And so I had this really broad experience and really enjoyed it. But I eventually said, there's other things to do in the world. And I had an offer to join a startup. And I realized after the fact that I was an entrepreneur in corporate America. Because that's
why we get along so well, because I did the same thing. 22 years as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it was about the same amount of time too.
Yeah.
So I joined this startup that was focused on something that I was really interested in. It's frankly old news now, but 22 years ago, it was around what they call expertise location, using technology to find expertise. And the idea really was to build call centers in the cloud, and to be able to, through technology, tap into expertise that was in large organizations that weren't necessarily frontline people, but had great expertise that if they could be harnessed in a way that wouldn't interfere with how they did their normal jobs, could be monetized and bring value to clients. So I was really intrigued with this, and it was an idea, frankly, that was ahead of its time. Today we know, we see kiosks, AI, all this stuff, the web conversation we're having now, all those things weren't possible 22 years ago.
Yep.
So that's how it all kicked off. And I was working for that firm, which didn't succeed, which often happens with early stage companies. And then I worked for others and consulted for other early stage companies. And along the way, and was really the start of the idea that gave me my freedom path beyond just leaving corporate. And I started to hire freelancers, because I would get hired for a consulting gig, but maybe I didn't have expertise in a particular industry, or they needed some extra skill that I was more of a generalist and operating and execution person. So I was hiring freelancers to round myself out so I could deliver the full package to a client. And what ended up happening was my clients started to say, that Jeff guy on your team is just the best. Can you find us a Jeff? And that's really how it started. And I was a power user of the big platforms out there that are public companies today. But it really was hard because the client would have to have my account on those platforms. And it just got kind of impossible. I was creating PDFs and all these kind of things. It was awkward. It wasn't systematic and efficient, which I don't like to do stuff that way. And what I discovered was I was really successful finding people on these platforms because of my background. I was organized. I'd run HR, even though I'm not an HR person. I'd just done a lot of that stuff. So I could quickly sift through the people to find the good ones. And I realized that the other thing that was missing from those platforms was human interaction. Now, my particular passion is small business. And that includes solopreneurs, frankly. And what I noticed about the big platforms, it was all do it yourself. So you'd spend a ton of time looking for people. And if you weren't good at defining your needs or interviewing and that sort of thing, it was a huge loss of time. So I basically decided I was going to build a technology platform that would insert the human into the process. And that's what I did. Okay. And I was a tad naive. It was a much bigger project than I thought. But we did. Results Resourcing is the platform that I designed, and I co-developed it. And today, it is a matchmaking platform that is exclusively focused on freelance talent. And we are, by choice, focused on solopreneurs and small and mid-sized businesses because, frankly, those are the businesses I care about that need the most help, that don't have a team behind them or expertise in HR. And given my background, I don't consider myself a business advisor, but I can listen to what's going on to say, I think if this is the result you're looking for, these are the skills you need, here's where to find it. And so I think my background was perfectly suited to really helping clients think through their needs so they could hire freelancers that would make a difference in their business. So that's how I got to today.
I'm speaking from someone who hires a lot of freelancers. It's a lot of work in a lot of cases because you don't know. Do I hire somebody overseas? And is that going to end up costing me more money than if I just spend a little bit more money for someone that maybe English is their native language, or they're a little bit more costly up front, but they might not be as costly over the long run if you basically are training somebody to do that and English isn't their first language.
Well, that's an excellent point. And frankly, another aspect of the platform is we were global in the beginning. Okay. And we found a lot of clients just underestimated what it would take to train somebody who's not familiar with the business situation in the United States and perhaps isn't a native speaker or speaks English, but it's British English. And we've ended up kind of geofencing the platform. So we focus on US and Canadian clients, and our freelancers are US Canadian. And it's really because our clients want people that speak English well and understand the business culture here and how business is done, because it's different around the world. And so however brilliant people are in almost every country that I've ever engaged with, they don't know what it's like here. So their ability to take on work that goes beyond thought work, that goes beyond just task completion, is more challenging. And there's time differences. So I think you raise a really good point that it may cost more when you look at the hourly outlay. But if you really think about the time it's going to take to train somebody or monitor their work or check their work, or if you really want somebody to take the initiative to do something, say in a client outreach or a research project or whatever, but sometimes it's better to spend a little bit more because you get a more capable person that can bring real thinking to the task.
No, I totally agree with you. Like I said, I think in the end, you got to look past the hourly rate and look at how long is it going to take to finish that project? How much work? Am I putting myself into a situation where I'm still doing a ton of work because I'm having to teach them what I want and how I want it and what it's going to look like on the end product and everything else? Whereas I can pay more and get a little bit more, talent up front.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, but in the United States, I hear a lot of people saying, I'm just going to get an intern. And
Yeah.
really, the same issues really apply there. However bright and willing they are, they
Mhm.
don't have business experience.
No.
And so you're going to teach them all this stuff, and it's probably not the career they want, so they're going to leave.
Yeah.
And so while the cost is lower going in, all
Well,
in,
but the funny part is, so I've hired a ton of interns over the years because we work with one of the local colleges. And if they come from a college, the college, they're going to get credit and everything else. They usually will come with a list of this is what, and if you read that list, you can't just let them go willy-nilly do their own thing. It is required by law that they're supervised and everything else. So you're putting yourself in for a lot of work
yeah.
for that free intern that you're getting, or that really low paid intern that you're getting. You have to be doing a ton of work, and you can't just dump them out there and say, okay, here's a project, get it done, or go get me coffee. No, the whole purpose of it is for them to learn.
Yeah. And I think that the purpose, if you have to be committed to that purpose, it's not necessarily purely to benefit your business. But you really want to help kids learn, and that's really valuable too.
Yeah, that's just cheap labor for you. So if somebody is sitting out there, so let's talk a little bit about the freelancer side of the business first. So if there's somebody out there, maybe they're a cubicle warrior, they're getting up, going to work every day, dying just a little bit every day in that cubicle, and they start looking at, well, could I have a career as a freelancer? Could you talk a little bit about what it's like to be a freelancer, the types of people you're hiring or you're helping to hire through the process?
Sure. And I think your question is really timely, especially with COVID and work from home. I think more and more people, frankly, have at least started side hustles, trying things out, which I actually think is a great first step as a side hustle. Because what I find about, and I love your phrase, cubicle warrior, what I find with cubicle warriors, particularly ones that have had more senior positions, is they decide to leave corporate America. And they think they have these amazing abilities, but they have never run a business. They have never done client development. They're used to getting an assignment from a boss. And there's just it's a whole new world. And they're used to being a corporate structure. So I think that's a big thing people need to think about. And I think the side hustle route is a great way to start, because you still have your income and you can test out your ideas. The other thing that I think is a great tool for people that want to do that, is to go to the platforms. There's tons of them. I mean, there's the big name ones like Upwork and Fiverr. You can do a lot of research just by going on those and typing in the skill you want to offer. And you'll see who else is doing it, how they describe. Maybe there's reviews and things like that. You can see pricing. There's so much available to you to really check it out and see how people are packaging their services. I think that's really important. And I would say I would point people probably towards platforms like Upwork, and there's many other, freelancer.com, guru.com. I mean, there's a lot. And I don't have a bias. It's whatever people want. But I mean, the average project value on a Fiverr is like $230.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to get a really lucrative role there. And whether you're on a Fiverr or an Upwork, it's really competitive. I mean, people who've been freelancing a long time are have built a business. So you're going to compete against that. So I think that it's just having your eyes open, and the more you can test it out with a side hustle, and or to partner with somebody whose skills you complement, that's a good strategy too. So those are just a couple of ideas, because at the end of the day, whether you're talking about an enterprise that's hiring through these platforms or you're talking about small business, they don't want somebody that's trying it out. They want somebody that's got skills that they can rely on. And so that's really, there's a commitment level when you're really hiring yourself out. I mean, if it's for a project, that's one thing. That's got a start and an end. But a lot of businesses are thinking about, frankly, a hybrid workforce. It's a solopreneur hiring someone that's going to be their partner as a virtual assistant or an executive assistant, a social media admin, stuff like that. They want that person to learn their brand, their offering, and to stick around.
Yeah, I always say my main virtual assistant, Monica, her and I, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
Yes, she works for me, but basically I let her run completely the social media side of our podcast and everything else. And it is our podcast, not my podcast at that point. But that was years of trust building. We worked together for almost 3 years now, and that's been years of trust building. And we built this brand together.
Yeah.
When she's obsessive about listening to podcasts, so she's always bringing ideas to the table. You don't find that always. You've got to find that special person. She had, frankly, zero experience starting with me, but she's just one of those people that actually can just get the ball going and figure it out. And I pay her well for where she lives, but in comparison, I would pay a fortune here if I was hiring somebody to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done exactly the right thing. Invested in a person.
But it took time, and it's
wage.
weeding through a lot of wheat for the chaff at that point. So let's switch gears now and talk about the business owner side of this. Let's say I'm a solopreneur or I've got a small business. What is that process for hiring a freelancer and figuring out where they fit into my organization?
Well, I think the most important thing for the business owner, solopreneur, small business, is probably two things. One is recognizing the value of time. Every hour, I mean, if you say your hourly rate is, for just sake of conversation, $150 an hour, then every hour you spend, if it's on a client thing or something that generates value for the business, is well spent. But if you're spending it entering information into your CRM or doing your own tech support work or whatever it might be, that's an opportunity cost. That's costing you $150 that isn't generating revenue for your business. I think I really like clients to think about what the value of time is, because it's going to help them better decide what the work they should do. And then the second part of that is, and I say this often, every business has a back room. Solopreneur, small business, there is stuff that you need to do that no client's going to pay you to do, but it's necessary to run a business. And that's really where to look, because if you start tackling that stuff, that starts the freedom path. We've done this little value of time, ROI of time survey that we send out to people that inquire about working with us. And it's really simple. It starts with, what's an hour of your time worth? How many hours a week do you work? And then what percentage of that work week is spent delivering client value? And it calculates a number. And of all the people that have taken this survey, the average is 47% of the work week is spent on client generating, revenue generating client work. So the majority is on the back end, but people don't realize it because it's a couple hours here or there. And the second part of the survey is, well, all right, how many hours you spend on invoicing, on frankly writing copy? If you're not a copywriter, that's not core to your business. It's a support task. So we go through a bunch of things and it calculates another number. And that's when people say, oh, I can't afford it, they're not thinking about the value of their time, because the hourly rate times the hours they're spending on the non-core work of their firm, if they can convert even a portion of those hours to value generating work, that pays for that freelancer. Now, of course, there's a leap of faith and it takes a little time to get up and running, but it's proven time and time again that look at that back room. And that's probably also the stuff you don't really like to do. And the cool thing about freelancers is you find the freelancer that loves to do what you don't love to do. And
are
match in heaven.
Markedly better at it than you'll ever be in your life. Although we as entrepreneurs always seem to think that we could do anything and we're good at it. Most of the time we suck at most of that stuff. But I look at it from my own podcast. For the longest time, the podcast didn't make any money. I'm spending my time doing this. And at the beginning, it was like, okay, I'll just do the podcast and then I'll do the editing and then I'll do the social media stuff and all that. And the best thing that I ever did was hire Monica, first off, who really took charge of the podcast. I have a team that does the social media side of it on part of it. I have a team that actually goes in, does the editing of the audio podcasts, and they post those and all that stuff. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, maybe I spend $1,000 a month total across the board. But all I have to be is the dancing monkey out in front. I mean, that's it. The one thing that I can't do, and maybe AI will do it for me, is I can pay AI, or I can create AI to do the interviews too. But I mean, this is the one thing I have to do. And it's the one thing I love about it. And I despise every other piece of it when it comes to it. I totally agree with you. Any advice for choosing that right person?
Well, I think what it boils down to in terms of picking the right person is being really clear about what you need and your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to start, that's kind of your baseline. If you haven't done
Yeah.
that, you're going to be swayed by whoever you're talking to. I think it's really important to have that baseline built. And I think that's going to point you in the right direction. And then it's hard to define work style or culture, but you need to like the person. And there's got to be some chemistry there too. But it's got to start with the skills. I mean, I think a lot of people actually start because they mention to their buddies, I need a VA. And they say, oh, well, I know this person. And what they operate on is the trust between the two buddies, as opposed to your buddy doesn't know what your business needs unless they're deeply involved in it. So that's another fishing expedition, frankly. And it's a lot of time spent interviewing people that you're friends with the best of intentions point your way. But I think that's actually another drain on the time you spend. Very well intentioned, but it often doesn't work out.
Well, and would you recommend? I remember reading the 4-Hour Work Week, and one of the things that Tim Ferriss recommended in there is even just running a small test. Yeah, okay, here's a task or a thing that needs to get done. Run that small test and see how that person performs.
Yeah.
I did that with some short term. I did some short videos for YouTube, and I basically put a job out on Upwork and said, hey, I need a good video editor. And I gave each of them a separate video. So I knew I would get all these videos done. And I wanted them to see, okay, did they go in and did they look at like my style and everything else? And some of them completed the task like super fast and it was complete garbage. And then some of them took forever and it was like the most beautiful video ever, but it's okay. We do a video a day here. So I do need somebody that can, be a volume person. And that was how I found my video editor, was that she was like kind of the perfect in between of all of that. She got the project done quickly and good enough that it looked professional, but oh my God, a 6-hour project that it took, or 10-hour project for a 4-minute video.
Well, I think that's a superb idea. And what emerged, as you told the story, was the fact that probably requirements that you didn't even know you had emerged.
Yep.
And the thing with the freelancers is they're going to do the best job they can based on their skill set and their orientation. And so if you have someone that's geared towards perfection, they're not going to be able to let go of that project until it's perfect. But that's the kind of thing of setting expectations that, hey, this needs to be volume. You want quality, but you don't want it to take too many hours, that kind of thing. So I think the test idea is good. And the only thing I would say, and wasn't obvious from what you said, but I suspect that you paid each one of these people. Go into this thinking, oh, I want a free trial.
Yeah, no.
That person's earning a living, feeding a family, whatever it is, and they don't feel valued when you expect them to put work in to see if they're going to get the job. No. But there are people actually that do that, and I'm
sure there is, and I'm sorry. One, if you're not willing to put money up, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be trying to hire somebody.
Yeah,
and you need to value their time just as much as you value your time. You should value their time, and they're a business person as well. And no, I don't fall for that at all. But it was one of those things where I basically said, okay, here's the project scope. Here's the amount of time allotted for that. If you need more, reach out to me. And then here's whatever price they came at me with of their proposal of, it was $10 an hour, $12 an hour, $15 an hour. Okay, fine. I mean, that's your price. I'm willing to try it. And like I said, I've done this 3 or 4 times and I thought it worked really well in those cases.
I think you did a good job.
Yeah.
Kudos.
Perfect. What else is new in your world that you're working on?
Well, I wouldn't say anything's brand new, but within the last year, we've rolled out a bunch of jobs that we call on-demand jobs. So when we first launched our platform, I was really doing what we called custom recruiting. So we would work with a client to build a job description, and then we would go find, vet, interview, and curate choices for them. So they would get a talent pool of 3 freelancers that we felt were a really good match for what they needed. And it took probably a minimum of 3 weeks. And not that it took us that long, but it took time for the word to get out, because we not only have jobs on our platform that we post, but we also post to LinkedIn. We are LinkedIn recruiters.
Okay.
So we have access to pretty much anyone in the world, even though we're focused on the US and Canada, that's interested in contract work. So we have a huge supply chain, depending on what people are looking for. But they don't apply right away. The good ones are busy. It takes a little time for us to give methods for reaching out and getting people to respond. But so people like that, but they basically came back for jobs like a virtual assistant, an executive assistant, social media support, bookkeeping, some project management, we have 8 jobs like that they said, we don't really need custom. It's a very well-defined role, but we need somebody that's competent, reliable, nice, and I want it now.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of going, okay, well, how do I do that?
Yesterday.
Yeah, because we guarantee our matches for the first 30 days. How do I give them somebody that I'm going to guarantee is a good match without the whole process we go through, which is both automation, algorithms, AI, and the human intervention. So essentially the way we solved that problem was pre-vetting a bunch of people.
Okay.
So they're all contractors. They're not our temp workers or anything like that, but we have pre-vetted virtual assistant teams. And frankly, they're small companies. Probably the largest one is a VA that has a team of 12. Some are employees and some are other contractors that she regularly works with. But we have a bunch of people like that we built relationships with. So we have basically a collaboration agreement that if I basically say, hey, Jeff wants this work done, and our work tends to be ongoing, not project, but here's a project from Jeff, and they see who you are, your LinkedIn profile, whatever, they see a job description, and I put it out to the people that I think are best suited to do your job. One will say, or multiple will say, okay, I've got the capacity, the skills to do that. But they've agreed basically to a certain rate structure. So I have a predictable rate structure to the client. And they've agreed to be up and running with a first phone call with the client within 24 to 48 hours.
That's awesome. Well, and I think that's the key too, is working with, I've started to learn that more. You've got the individual freelancers that are out there, and then you've got these little small VA companies. And I think the difference there is now you have a team, so that if your one VA flakes on you or decides that they got a job someplace else, boom, all of a sudden they're gone, versus having a team that understands, okay, this is the client and we're here to support them. And if somebody goes on vacation, you've always got that person. That's the backup.
And they're business owners. So they know what it's like to be a small business owner. Yep. And people do. They get COVID. Somebody gets cancer in their family. I mean, things can be unpredictable in life. And so you've got redundancy by having that person. And I just think that entrepreneurial spirit of running a business is they can relate to the small business clients that they're serving. And the other thing I like about these firms is they're committed to a business. They're not looking to be your employee. They don't want to get another job. They want to run their business. And I think that's a big difference, because sometimes you hire an individual and then 6 months later, somebody offers them a little bit more money, or, they decide they don't really like being an independent worker anymore and they go back to work, and then you're left in the lurch. And so those are ways to kind of protect against that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And like I said, they're a small business owner too, so they're going to understand the need to be more efficient in the long run.
One other thing I would mention, since you were talking about the small firms, is a lot of them come and expect you to sign a subscription or a retainer, a certain amount of time a month. And they do that, frankly, because they don't have automation. And so we don't have to do that. So there's no minimum retainer to working with our on-demand resources. We basically charge a 1-hour job deposit, and then you use the time you need. And to me, it just boils down to courtesy and communication. If you hired me, Jeff, you and I would be talking about what is next week. And maybe you don't need me next week. You're going on vacation. Fine. I can plan. I can work with the other clients, because a lot of people, they don't know how many hours they need. And it's claustrophobic to have to commit to a $1,500 retainer or X hours
Yeah.
a week. And then you end up filling the time just like you would an
Yeah.
employee. And it's like you
Yeah.
lost the flexibility.
Well, I think of it as you're starting to dump a bunch of crap that you probably should have just taken off your plate, period.
Exactly.
I use an acronym of IDEA. So identify what needs to be done, delegate what you can, eliminate what you can, automate what you can, and then anything else that's left over, you should be doing at that point. And that's what I've worked off of for years. And it's like, why are you doing this task? Well, because we've always done it. Well, why? What's the purpose of doing this?
Yeah.
I had a great boss when I was with Fidelity that you would come to him and say, well, we need to get this done. Okay, well, why aren't you getting it done? Well, because they told us we couldn't do it. Who's they? Let's go talk to they and let's get that out of here because we don't need to be doing that anymore.
Yeah, good story. And I like the acronym idea. That's good.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, let's change gears here and talk about the fast 5 questions now. You ready?
All right.
All right. So first question, you wake up in the morning, business is totally gone. You have $500 in your pocket, laptop, computer, place to live, food and drink. What are you going to do first?
Oh, let's see. First, I'm going to feed my cats.
Okay. Good answer. Yeah.
They are not going to allow much to happen without feeding.
Yeah. If yours are like mine is, he pretty much doesn't let us get out of the house without feeding.
For sure. And maybe because of everything you just described, I might exercise or go.
Okay.
I'd go for a walk to get a bagel, a New York City bagel for sure.
There you go.
But then honestly, at this point, given what's happened, I'd start again.
Okay.
I mean, I love what I do. It's really fulfilling. I often say that my purpose is to empower the purpose of others. I like deploying everything that I've done in my professional life to help other people move ahead faster and scale their businesses. And so they have freedom and they have the impact they want in their families, their business community, their just general community. So I would probably just start again. Maybe I wouldn't build a platform a second time because that was a big endeavor, but I'd start again.
I love it. All right. What's the biggest business mistake you've ever made?
I don't want this to sound smug because it's not, but I don't think of them as making big business mistakes. Certainly I've made mistakes, but I've also learned a lot. Every single time I misjudged something or I could have done a better job or something like that, I prefer to think about it as it's all part of the evolution of leadership and thinking about operations and running things, working with clients, whatever it is. I think the biggest thing is to be humble and admit when something didn't work. But at the end of the day, don't beat yourself up on it. You did the best you could, presuming that you did do the best you could, and just move on from there. Just put that in your backpack and say, I'm going to do it differently next time. Yeah, I think if you don't make mistakes, you try to trying to be perfect is a mistake. Perfect is a mistake. I mean, it isn't real. And life is all about context and what's going on, not even just for you, but in your life, Jeff. I'd be thinking about your life if we're talking about working together. And so I just think I think it's important just to think about things that don't go wrong as, all right, how do I use that to do something different, have a better impact next time?
Yeah. Great answer. What's a good book that you'd recommend for our audience?
Well, I've got one that many people probably haven't heard of. And it's called Thank You for Being Late. And the subtitle is An Optimist's Guide to Thinking in the Age of Acceleration. So it's a mouthful. And it was written in 2016. Have you heard of it?
No, first time.
Okay. Well, it's written by Thomas L. Friedman, and he's actually a columnist in probably a few newspapers. And he's also a Middle East and politics expert. And it's just a really interesting story. The title came about because somebody was late to lunch. And he had an extra half hour and a napkin and a pen in front of him. And he started to jot ideas down out of the book. But what I really like about it and why I think it's good for the Freedom audience is, first of all, the book talks about entrepreneurship. And he ultimately says the ideal is the wrong word, but the best entrepreneur is Mother Nature. because Mother Nature is constantly just dealing with life and what's happening.
Yeah.
No judgment. Whatever you think about whatever's going on in the world, Mother Nature just adjusts. We may not like the adjustments that Mother Nature makes, but Mother Nature is just doing what Mother Nature needs to do. So there's a number of chapters that talk about that, which I think is just a good lesson about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You can't control things that are happening around you, but what can you do about it and move forward? And the second thing I really like about it, and this is really particular to my business, is there's a chapter in there where he's interviewing this guy called Astro Teller of Google. And there's a chart that I love. And basically it shows, he's talking about technology. And there's a chart where it shows the rate of acceleration of technology, which he talks about as artificial intelligence. So this is so timely to what's happening today. And it's a really hockey stick kind of line. And over years, it's just been this really steep curve. And then it shows, and what's the ability of human beings to adapt to technology, to adopt it. And it's not a flat line, but it's a much lower grade. And basically,
a little bit more herky-jerky in that process.
Yeah, exactly. And what he says is that if that steep line is artificial intelligence and technology, then the gap is what he says, that's the opposite when you need intelligent assistance, which can only be provided by human beings. And I think it's so timely for these days, because when you hear about ChatGPT and how people are using it blindly, that's really ignoring the power of AI, but it still requires a human to look at it and does it pass the reasonable test? Are the facts right? And so I think it sets humans up for success faster, because you can get a ton of data. You don't have to do a Google search. It's going to put it all together for you. But now a human needs to apply it. So I just love that analogy, because frankly, it inspired my platform. That's what we do by inserting humans into the process. We provide intelligent assistance to people that need to build a job description and hire freelancers. So we're using technology to automate it, make it efficient, make sure that we've found all the best candidates for things. But at the end of the day, because we're human, it's just better to have a human interaction to make a good match, because you need that human interaction and that chemistry to help you really utilize a freelancer effectively.
That's great. I'd love that. And that's a new book on our list of books. So thank you. What's a good tool that you use in your business that you might recommend?
So probably my favorite tool is a mind map. And I happen to be familiar with one that's offered by MindJet. But I know there's plenty out there. But basically, I don't want to say run my life in a bureaucratic way, but I organize my life, whether it's who I have to send birthday cards to, or what my schedule is for the week, or frankly, I designed my entire technology platform using it, because I was able to think about, it's like flow charts in a way. And basically, I was able to fairly organize thinker, and I would just kind of list out, all right, what are all the components to my platform, or I'm doing a mailing campaign or something out there, or I'm thinking about my interview or my podcast with Jeff. What are the things I want to be thinking about? And I just use MindMap to capture all that. And what's cool about MindMap is it's not static, so you can move I'll call them bubbles or little word phrases around. So you're constantly able to kind of reorganize your thinking about things. And I don't know if that does a great job of describing it, but it's a really useful tool that I think it can be, and you can export these mind maps to Word documents, PowerPoint, to spreadsheets, to project management software. So I just think it's a great tool.
Well, I use them like when I'm launching a product. I'll have that core product or core brand or whatever, and then I start breaking it out into, okay, well, what can I do? How can I, if this is the core, how can I then take that core and use it for bits and pieces and parts? And how can you turn that into monetization and everything else? So,
yeah, exactly right.
Huge fan. That's a new tool, though. I hadn't seen that one before.
Yeah.
So I was just quickly downloading it. So to
Yeah, I'm a
play with
huge
it.
fan. Huge fan.
Usually I have whiteboards all over my office where I've got all these written out on the whiteboards, but it's nice to have them electronic too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, fantastic. Last question. What is your definition of freedom?
I'm afraid this is going to sound like really Pollyanna-ish, but I want financial freedom, and I want basically the wherewithal to do what I want to do, and not be kind of locked into a schedule of corporate priorities, things like that. I love the freedom of having my own business, but I also accept that freedom comes with responsibility.
Yeah.
And the only reason I have freedom is because I work hard at my business and I work hard at serving people. And so freedom comes with responsibility. But I want basically the freedom to continue to help people do, as I said before, I like to empower the purpose of others. That gives great meaning to me in life. And so I would say that I want the freedom to keep doing that, whether it's volunteering, teaching entrepreneurship, or working with my clients, both the clients that hire through us, as well as the freelancers that freelance through us.
Yeah.
It's really meaningful.
Awesome. Great answer. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on today. You came as advertised after our first conversation. And thank you for sharing with the audience. I think people that are interested in freelancing got something out of this. And I think people that have painted themselves into a corner like I used to be, it's nice to have that person that can come rescue you out of the corner at times when you've got that. Thank you for sharing that with our audience.
Oh, my pleasure. It was really fun, just like the first time we met.
Absolutely. Well, folks, thank you for joining us once again. We do these twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays for you. So you get to meet all kinds of cool folks like Elizabeth and learn from them and their journeys that they've been on. Make sure wherever you're at that you're hitting the subscription button. Make sure that you are sharing with us your thoughts and giving us that little upvote or 5-star vote when it comes to that. So thanks a lot, and we will see you guys back here the very next time.